Alrighty, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me. It's your host, Jester. It's time for another Jester's Judgment as we talk about the things we really like about a game, things that aren't so great about a game, and then give you our overview and thoughts about it. Is it something you should pick up? Is it something you should find? Today, we are going to be doing Darkest Night First Edition. I know there's a second edition. I own the second edition. I've been playing the first edition, so I'm going to review just first edition and talk about that. So if you're looking for second edition information or my thoughts on that, maybe we'll do that in another video some other time. But for now, we're talking about just Darkest Night First Edition. So let's get to it and see what I thought of all of the positives, the 5 best things about Darkest Night. Right, so here we go. And with that, without further ado, let's go to number 1. There we go. So it is super quick turns. This is an adventure boss battling game where the necromancer has control of the different areas and is causing problems and different things, and you are taking some characters out to try and take back the lands and to save the people and do all that fun fantasy adventuring things. One of the best things about this, it is super quick turns. Each character gets to do one thing on their turn, boom, they're done. If you move, that's it. If you attack, that's it. If you activate one of your powers, that's it. So turns are super quick, super simple. There's not a lot to it. It's super, keeps the game flow going and gets things moving. And it's not like, okay, I gotta move, then I gotta attack, then I gotta do this, and I gotta do that, and then my turn's over. Nope. One simple little action and you're done. So turns are super quick, which I do like a lot, actually. Number 2, if I can find it in my little sheet here, number 2 is going to be lots of variety. There is tons of variety with the different characters, the different powers each of the characters has. Each character plays differently. There is adventure cards. There is events. There are artifacts. There are stacks and stacks of different cards that you will play with when you play this game. So there's a huge amount of variety. Each of the characters, you're only going to start the game with 4 of the character cards. They have 10 character cards, and you're only going to see maybe 1, maybe 2 other cards the whole time you're playing it. So there's tons of variety. You can play the same character and never see any of the same cards as you play through the game, which is great. Tons of variety. Number 3, the different characters. The different characters are interesting. They're not just your standard fantasy fair characters. There's actually quite a variety of different characters in this game. Each of the characters plays very differently. As I mentioned, every character has 10 different cards. You're going to start with 4 of those cards, and then maybe, as I said, maybe you'll earn 1 or maybe 2 more cards for your characters. So you're not going to see a whole bunch of those cards. So every time you get one, they're super powerful. They're super interesting. The characters do play different. You feel them doing different things. And again, they're not just your standard typical. There are some tropes going on with fantasy there. But I mean, you have like a miser class. You have a nymph class. You have a crusader class. You have some of those, not normal fantasy character classes. There's a lot of really good variety in this. It's not just, okay, it's a dwarf, an elf, and a paladin, and a fighter, and a ranger. There's a lot of really good development. A lot of thought goes into these characters. Monks, there's priests. Like I said, I'm just trying to think of right off the top of my head. There's a bunch of different really cool characters in this game. Number 4 is The special abilities, again, super cool. You start off with just a couple cards in play. I was thinking it's 4, but maybe now that I'm thinking about it, it might only be 3 cards you start with. And then as you earn those cards, I think the reason I was thinking it was 4 is because each character has 4 default cards, and you can choose 3 of those to start with. And then as you earn extra cards, you're gonna pull a card off the top of your deck. So every one of your special abilities is super cool, super unique, kind of rounds your character out, makes them super important. You have your sorcerers casting spells, you have your knights casting charms and protections, you have your other characters that might be able to like move 2 spaces instead of 1 space. You have other characters like the fighter that's maybe rolling 2 dice when they're attacking as opposed to 1 dice. So all of the special abilities really kind of fine tune and really round out the characters and make them really interesting to learn and play and do things with. And last but not least, the 5 best things about this is it tells a super great story. If you like thematic games that tell a story as you are progressing through the game, this game does it in spades. You're going to remember the moments when the blight turns, and you're going to end up remembering when the knight failed his turn and the skeletons knocked the knight out, or when the necromancer ended up moving into a area and ended up killing the rogue, or it's going to give you those moments. Or when you just draw a special event and you have to get over there to try and earn one of the keys, or complete this event, or it's going to just be horrible for you guys. It tells a super great story as you progress through the game with all of the special abilities, all of the interesting things that happen, and all of the just random gameplay that happens as you're playing through the game. It tells a great story. So there's a lot to really like about the Darkest Night First Edition. Super a lot to like about this first edition of Darkest Night. But it's not all great. Unfortunately, there are a few things that I'm not a big fan of, and we're going to talk about those in our cons, the 5 cons of the game. Number 1 is you do need all of the expansions for the first edition to kind of round the game out and give you everything. Like, the base game doesn't come with events, and it doesn't come with quests, and it doesn't come with all the characters, and it doesn't come in. I know the second edition does. The second edition comes with everything in one big package, but this first edition, you need to find the expansions, you need to order the expansions, or you need to get like a Necromancer bundle or the deluxe edition bundle or something like that. So you get all the expansions because you want to have all the different characters. You want to have all of the different options with the encounter cards and the quest cards and all that stuff. Some of that stuff doesn't come in the base game. You need expansions for that. So you definitely, absolutely, positively need to get the expansions for this game, which is kind of a bummer because some of them are hard to find. Some are expensive to get, and they are what I would consider almost needed to round out Darkest Night First Edition. So yeah, unfortunately, you need those extra expansions to round the game out and make it as good as I've been talking about. Number 2, it is die-based luck. You are going to be rolling your dice a lot to pass tests and to do different checks and doing all this stuff. And as soon as you start failing those checks, that's when the game starts working against you. So it is all die-based luck. You can be super lucky, and if you keep rolling 5s and 6s and completing all your checks, that's awesome, and you won't have too many problems in the game. It's when you start failing all those checks and the dice are not working to your favor and everything you're trying to do is failing, and it just can get very frustrating because you're rolling maybe 2 or 3 different checks for every character, and that character's failing tests and it's losing all of its life points, and before you know it, the character's knocked out because he just failed too many checks in a row, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you get to pass your checks, and you're going to be rolling them all the time. So if you don't like dice-based luck checks, if you don't like, if you are not a fan of the dice gods and the dice gods are not fans of you, you might not like this game either. Number 3. The events, when you do get all the expansions and you get everything to round the game out, the events can absolutely be brutal and terrible and absolutely horrible, and they can really mess you up in such a terrible way. Like, you could have one secrecy on, you draw a card, and it's like, well, if you have, if you are in this area, you lose 2 secrecy or whatever, boom, and you're like, wow, I just decimated. My character just got wiped out. Or you might draw an event that's like, oh, you need to exhaust all of your skills, or you have to pass a test, and if you fail your test, then you have to exhaust all your skills, and you're like, oh my god, my character is completely nerfed now because of this random event. So if you don't like events that can come in and like completely change the game in a negative, against you, then this might not be the game for you either. It can be a very harsh environment. It is designed to be very harsh. It's designed to be very tough. It's designed to be a game where you're not going to win all the time. But if you like challenges and you like things working against you to make it very tough, this might be a great game for you. Number 4. Constant threat coming. And what I mean by this is every turn, every single solitary turn of the game, the enemy does its thing against you and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Every turn. So you are going to be trying to prevent things from happening and running around the board trying to get rid of all the bad things on the board, and every turn the enemy's going to be putting more and more things on the board. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it does become part of the game is about trying to mitigate what they can do against you. But you just have to know going in that it is a constant threat that happens over and over and over and over again every turn. And it doesn't seem fair, and it's not, because your 4 little characters are going to move, and attack, and then the enemy is going to get to do things and put all the things you just took away and put them all back on the board again. Every single turn. So the threat is constantly coming and it's constantly there, and there's nothing you can do about it. So again, if you don't like this overwhelming field of dread and the overwhelming power of the game working against you, this might not be the game for you. And last but not least, in my opinion, I think the game length lasts a little bit too long. It's gonna basically last 30 turns at the longest. The enemy could wipe you out before that, but the longest it's gonna last, I think, is 30 turns. Because once you hit 30 turns, then the blight is taken over and it's game over. You have a chance to win before that, but it's a very small chance of winning. This is one of those games, I guess the best way to pronounce it is, it's not about winning, it's about how well you mitigate your loss. If you lose, but you feel good about your loss, then that's a win. Because this is an extremely hard game, it's extremely tough, and it is not for the faint of heart. So, what do I think about the Darkest Night First Edition? Again, we are talking about just First Edition. If you own the Second Edition, you get all the stuff in the game box. You have all the updated equipment. You have all the updated cards. You have everything in one box, which is great. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about First Edition. And I'm talking about what you need to do to round out and play a great game of the First Edition. I find this game to be, in my opinion, probably the number one best game that nobody's ever heard of and that nobody's ever played. For some reason, this game fell under the radar for many, many people. I just happened to watch a video of somebody playing it a couple years ago and thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. And ended up getting a second edition back in the day. And then recently started getting back into it and getting the first edition, which is basically the same game, but with the first edition components. And it's a lot cheaper. And I'm talking a lot cheaper. You're talking second edition, if you can find anywhere from $150 to $200 minimum. If you find it for that price, it's actually a good price. The first edition is a much better investment for everyone out there, and that's the reason I'm doing this video, is because to let people know you can actually find first edition games at a pretty reasonable price. You can find a lot of the expansions. You can find deluxe editions. You see the Necromancer bundle edition. There's a deluxe edition. There's several other editions that come with the base game and several of the expansions already built into it. Some of the expansions are available for you to pick up and get. And so getting a first edition is a much easier and less costly process for most people out there, because again, finding a second edition of this game is extremely hard and it's going to cost you a lot of money. So if you can find the time and effort to get a first edition, what do I think about it? I think it's an awesome game, and I think it's probably, again, the number one game that nobody ever plays and nobody knows about. A lot of people that are probably watching this have no idea what Darkest Night is, have never seen anyone play it, have never heard anyone talk about it, and don't know anything about it other than what I've mentioned so far. So this is a great game, and I highly recommend it. I am rating it at a 90%, and I'm rating it as excellent. Again, probably the number one game that nobody's ever heard of and nobody's ever played. And I think if you can find it, and you like fantasy, you like story, you like games with lots of story, you like games that are very difficult and very hard, you like great solo game because the game works against you, the game is on rails. You're rolling a dice and you're doing things. You make no decisions for the game. The game makes all the decisions. You're rolling a die. It tells you the Necromancer is going to move to a location. And then you draw an event, you draw a card, and boom, the game does work against you. So it plays great solo. You're going to be running anywhere between, I think you have to run in this game 4 characters. I could be wrong. There could be some house rules, or you might be able to play with less than 4 characters. But you want to play with 4 characters anyways. Playing with 4 characters rounds out your party. It makes it so you get more actions and you can do more things, and you get all the special cool things where you get to look at you get to see how the different characters play. You get to activate all the special abilities. You get to have a lot of fun doing things with all the different characters and seeing how they play. So you want to play with 4 characters. I think you can play with 5 or 6 characters if you wanted to as well. I'm trying to think if there's house rules or what the heck is going on. I've heard the 911 thing is going off. I can hear it buzzing in the other room. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. So my verdict is it's an excellent game. Again, I'm doing the first edition because I think it's available. I ended up just buying the deluxe edition of the game, and I know that recently, last at the end of last year, I ended up buying the Necromancer bundle. So I know there's some copies available. I know there's some expansions available, and I think if this game interests you, if you like a challenge, you like a game that works against you and is extremely hard, and you're not going to win it, and it's cool because it has all kinds of different characters with special abilities and special powers, and nothing's ever the same, and every event you pull is going to be completely different. If you like randomness, if you like variability, if you like all that, this is a great game for you. But if you don't like games that have a lot of luck, you don't like games that are very dice based, if you don't like games that are very hard and very challenging and almost unfair, then this might not be the game for you. But I would highly recommend you find a couple videos online of this game, Darkest Night, and check out a gameplay, because there are some gameplay videos on the internet that I think you should watch, and you might just fall in love with this game like I did. It is a hidden gem in my opinion. I love games that have lots of different characters. I love games that give me variable setup. I love games that tell a story. And I love games that are different every time you play them. And that's what Darkest Night does. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's going to beat you down like a redheaded stepchild every time you play it. But if you accept that going in, you're going to have a great time, and you're going to have a couple of moments that you're going to remember from every single game you play. Highly recommend it. Excellent game. The best game that nobody ever plays and nobody ever talks about. Darkest Night, first edition. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Until then, my friends, take care of yourselves. Have a good night, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching.